So I came up with a very visual way to explain it, to describe it, and that is I just noticed there were two basic phases of production, the arts or the crafts, but I decided to be more visual. I call it the spew and the edit. In the spew mode, it's really, pardon the analogy, but it's like throwing up. You've got something inside of you that needs to come out, and you don't want to stop until it's all out. And you'll look at what's out later and figure out what's good and bad, but it's really important to not judge what's happening in the spew mode, to not say, that sucks, because the first thing you play will suck, most likely, unless you're lucky. And if you let that be a problem, you'll talk yourself out of that taking you to the good stuff. A lot of ideas are stepping stone ideas. When I see people collaborate, I see somebody say, what about if we went to halftime here? And somebody else say, not halftime, but double time, and so instead of dismissing the halftime idea, they let it lead them to the one that really does work. So you can't dismiss a bad idea because it could lead you somewhere. So you can't afford, therefore, to judge any idea as being better or worse. And there will be time for that in the edit phase or the craft part of the arts and crafts. Mm-hmm. For the more polite audience. They don't want to visualize you spewing all over. But it really is like that. It's almost like, I've got to get this out. I've got to get this out, and at one point you might want to start tweaking it, but you're like, no, there's more. And the benefit is that you give yourself a lot of material that will all relate because it all came from one download or dump, if you will.
Right.
And you've got a bunch of pieces to play with. You can throw some out, you can rework some, but then the craft part, the left brain comes in, then you get to judge. And you get to say, crap, gold, and keep this one, let's get rid of that one.
Roger Raw in the chat brings up a good question. He says, he says, I get stuck and attached to those sounds from the spew mode. Is there something you need to do to sort of get out of spew mode into edit mode and not be too attached to those sounds, or?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer that because I'm not sure what the attachment really is. Is it genuine attachment because the sounds are good, or is it what we call demoitis, which is you're attached to it because it's comfortable. You've heard it a lot.
Yeah.
And that is that happens when. That's why a lot of engineers and producers hate to give out a rough mix, because people will love it over time because it'll be familiar. And then you give them the real mix and they're like, oh, I missed that. Like, well, that wasn't supposed to be there. Now you're not even hearing the new mix because you're so attached. So that's one reason why people don't like to give out rough mixes or
interesting.
He's
saying in the chat that that's what it is. It's demoitis. That experience.
Yeah, and the only thing to do there is to start practicing the other concept, which is whenever you're stuck, just do the other. If you're going this way, go that way. If you're at this tempo, make it faster, make it slower, whatever the other is. Make it go higher, go lower, go bigger, go smaller, go brighter, go duller. Go minor if you're major, go major if you're minor. Wherever you're stuck, do something different. Just change a direction somewhere in something you're doing, even if it seems arbitrary, just to break yourself out of the rut and get moving a different direction. Save it as the old version if you feel like there might be something worth referencing later, and then you can let go of it. That's the beauty of computers, unlike analog tape that I got so excited about when the transformation started happening, was the ability to hang on to stuff instead of like, okay, we've bounce down all these background vocals to 2 tracks. Are you sure you like that mix? Because we're about to go and wipe all the other tracks now so we can finish the song. Or, oh, I punched you in there. I like the other one better. Oh, well. Oops.
No, that's true. That's true. And there's, some people have spoken over the course of Music Making Month that process of having to commit, there's a certain benefit to that, too, from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, I mentioned, and I don't think it came out in time, I did Lewis's 10 questions, and I mentioned in there that there's I was just trying to remember his name. I blanked out on what I was just going to say.
But wait, so is that an upcoming thing? This is Lewis Filter, who runs a blog called, what is his, resonantfilter.com,
resonantfilter.com, I think. And so Yeah. What were we just talking about? Now I'm really totally lost.
Demoitis, committing things to tape and having to sort of, that being a curse and a blessing.
That's the word that took me back. When I started, I was only working in a studio for 2 years before I got my first deal that allowed me to buy gear and have my home studio, which was 1986. And of course, in the big studio, I actually experienced the blank page thing. I'm sitting in front of an SSL with a 32-track digital machine, a Fairlight, a DX1, a Jupiter 8, Simmons, real instruments, a Bosendorfer grand piano, tube mics, outboard rack to die for, and I'm just sitting there going, I don't know, could do this or... And there was too many options. And so what I do is, what I did at the time, as far as living in the home studio with, I didn't even have one microphone at that point, but having one microphone, kind of a home studio versus the big studio, I started to try to cross-pollinate what was working in both. So I imposed limits on the big studio. Like today, I'm just going to do something with the piano. And then I would try to upgrade the quality by bringing home pieces of gear from the studio or a microphone or something to bring the quality of the studio into the home recording and kind of cross-pollinate those two. But I'm not sure there were many other people around that time that had a home studio and had a studio job at the same time to kind of sit on the fence between both worlds and kind of watch them evolve and come back around to the home studio being the predominant place where a lot of production is done. Maybe not the final mixing all the time, but a lot of the production is done at the home studio.
A question coming in on the chat right now. Scotty33 wants to know, what do you think is the most groundbreaking element or elements of Reason that you've discovered personally?
Oh, that's an easy one. The environment, the integration is unlike any other application out there. The balance of everything. You can say that the reverb's not your favorite, or you can say, I wish the tape echo and Kong had tempo sync, or you can pick apart little details. But each of the pieces of the puzzle, and they keep upgrading them, but each of the basic elements that's there, the basic EQs, the basic compressors, the basic synths and everything is balanced very nicely so that you don't ever get the feeling like any of it's sucking, even though you might be thinking later, I might want to replace this with another sound. And a lot of times you get the demoitis thing and you realize, this sounds fine. You know what? It's going to take me longer to find a better sound if there even is one, but now I kind of like this sound. So the thing that attracts me to Reason is just the excitement from being in an environment where you can, like I said, I'm doing the drum thing. A tambourine needs a delay, tambourine, done, bam. I don't know.
I love it because then the answer becomes, what's the one groundbreaking element of Reason for you? And the answer is Reason.
Yes, the answer is Reason. Is the environment. I still get excited when I get an idea and I go over to my system. If it's not already booted up, which it is 90% of the time, I'm just getting excited about let's try this, because I know that all of the basic tools of the trade that I need are all there.
Right.
And they're all above average. And like I say, you can argue about whether this compressor is your favorite all-time compressor, but it doesn't matter because you can always go out and add that later if you really feel like you need it. But at the beginning of the process, when it's crucial to be inspired and to have all the options that you need without being overwhelmed, it's the only software that I don't know, I get excited about it. I still do. I mean, it's been I think 2003 when I first got Reason, and slowly has become a place that I go there first. If I'm thinking music, I'm probably going to go to Reason or record today.
So you were telling me actually
first.
that you are in the midst of, I guess, your own sort of personal transition, right? You are moving your mixing activity over to the big record mixer and the record environment.
Yeah,
and
I'm not consciously moving in terms of leaving one for another. I'm just starting to use it as a mixing all audio tracks. Like let's mix a project. I'm going to import all the audio tracks and see where I end up. So I'm enjoying it, and I'm finding that I need to build a bunch of custom things, which I'm going to show you guys to pull it off. But it's a quite an interesting upgrade from Reason to add the things that I've always thought were missing. Now, to go back as an electronic musician, I did my first record all MIDI, and by the second record, I was like, I have to have audio tracks. I got all these other things that I can play that aren't MIDI, and so I did my second album in a multi-track environment, and then when I finally got Pro Tools and Studio Vision were released in '91 or '92, I had 4 audio tracks, and I was in heaven. So I've always seen organic acoustic instruments and electronic instruments as going together and wanting to have them be side by side. And
there's a question from Rukafest in the chat. He says, people have been, by the way, admiring your Elvis and then the Reason and recycle boxes and everything that's in the background.
Yes.
So Rukafest has asked, he says, we all see recycle there in the background. Does it get used a lot? And I guess more to that, he wants to know what you personally hope to see for recycle development in the future. But are you using recycle?
I use it. I got a free copy in, what year was it released? 1994 was it?
Something.
I think.
That's right.
I helped with the review an electronic musician for recycle, and so I got it free because the guy who did the review didn't have any use for it. I had sample cell, and I'm like, I can use this. You know, I don't know how yet, but I've got all these loops that haven't been sliced up, so I can use this. And I got into it then, and then kind of got out of it. But it's something that I just keep coming back to occasionally. I need this for this. I just recently answered a question about somebody wanting the click on record and Reason to come out a separate output. So I said, let's just record the click and recycle it. And then you can use it at any tempo and put it out at its own output and do whatever you want to with it. So that was the last time, about a month ago, I used it. The future, I see a couple things. I hope, as many of you do, I'm sure, that it's going to be integrated in some way. I think it would be great for it to be integrated into Record like Reason is integrated into Record. If you own it, it shows up. I don't know how it would look, but the obvious thing is you want to be able to slice things right there. Like you can sample edit now for the NNXT. You should be able to Rex edit for the Octarex. And the other thing I find fascinating is the possibility of integrating it into audio tracks, where you could take a drum track, for example, and Rex it and then quantize those clips. If you can add that feature as well, quantizing any object in the track, not just MIDI notes. So there's possibility to use it as a part of a elastic audio function on tracks. If you were to combine that with the stretching that they already have, then, because not one algorithm ever works for all types of materials, I think it could be a pretty powerful way to mold and shape audio in a track.
Well, if recycled development were a democracy, I think the chat would have just elected you mayor of the recycled development team. So
Recycleville. No, those are comments that I've heard other people say too, and definitely not uniquely mine. But they already own the technology, so it exists. If there's a way that it can be used, I can't really envision 100% how it would actually look, but I think I just have that hope that maybe they can.
Right. Okay, well, let's see. Let's take a look at our... Hey, now.
Let's hear some sounds.
Is that additive again?
Yes.
Should we take a look at the tape simulator combinator?
Yes. I'll have to load up a different song. Let me just show this really quick.
Sure.
Because I can give the quick tour. The idea is I'm taking audio, feeding it to a vocoder, and patching all those levels out to a mixer where the actual sine waves come in. So by doing that, you can basically impose a sound on another. The simplest thing is if I feed noise to it, unfiltered noise, it's all faders up essentially. So if we look at the mixer, we'll see all the sine waves are playing equal volume. Not particularly pleasant, but a little bit of a low pass, especially a very gentle low pass filtering, and you can get. Now we also have the grainy kind of thing happening, which is happening because of the smoothing or decay time on the vocoder. If I can get rid of that, and it's because noise is the source, so it's kind of wobbling a little bit. I don't know if you can hear how that gets kind of grainier, and definitely. It's kind of cool. I usually leave it up there a little bit higher.
And by the way, people are asking if these patches are anything that will be available to the community.
Yeah, this I want the community to help with this, actually, because there's a lot of things you can do that are really cool. So if you just filter the noise, then we have something that sounds like very analog, subtractive kind of thing, even though we're just building it with sine waves. The other cool thing is you can layer stuff. Here's sine harmonics and the noise layered together. And even things like FM synthesis have their characteristic kind of imposed on the sound. And without going into too much detail, the pitch controls which harmonics are active, and it's kind of confusing at first. So if I play, if I tune this higher, it opens up different harmonics. And obviously, if I just use a sine wave with no modulation or anything, then we'd actually be easier to hear if you find one that I can sweep here. Let's just go with a sine wave. So essentially what it's doing now is it's an automated mixer. If you put 16 different waveforms into this mixer, you could be cross panning between them as well, which is something I haven't tried, but I'll leave that to somebody else. The fun part is anything can be a source, including rhythms, which can then go through a scream or phaser and a delay without delay. Of course, combining all the different elements. Anyway. And what I haven't shown is that panning is also being controlled by a second oscillator. So the panning of all these is being, we've got a comb filter on it so that every harmonic is being panned differently. As
so that's something that for us in Skypeville we don't get to appreciate, but when we ultimately get our hands on these, we'll be enjoying.
It's awesome.
Really.
I wish you guys could share it. No, it's all right.
All right, everybody write a strongly worded letter to the Skype Corporation. I guess that would be Microsoft now. Tell them we want stereo
that's
Skype.
That's going to work, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So
let's look at this. This will be a good. This is a pretty intensive song. If we get issues here, I'm going to have to raise the buffer. Well, I'm just going to raise the buffer because I can almost predict issues. Okay, this has the. Hopefully that'll do it. This has a lot going on, and this poor little reduced can. Yes. Struggling. I hear you. Here's the Combinator. Is it even going to let me play?
Oh, this is the tape simulator. Oh, yeah, just a question before you can stay on this one, but a question that came in from who was it? SynthLab, I think. He wanted to know if your B3 was built in the same way as these additive synths are through a series of sine waves. Oh, I've lost you. No. We've lost audio. The tape simulator has flummoxed.
Let's see. If, okay.
We're back.
We're back. As long as I don't don't want to show you that, I guess.
Okay, that one's to look but not hear.
Let's see if I can just play a little bit of it, and I'll bypass the tape part. There's so much else going on, but see if we can get through any of it. It may not even play. It plays fine when. Not looking promising. I'm actually surprised that that's a problem. I could switch out. Let me try one more thing, since this may be one of the last things I do.
You've got a chat room full of people now troubleshooting with you here. Let's see here.
Okay. Do we have mic?
We have mic, yep.
Okay, it's quieter. I'm in a different input, and it's delayed to me. So I'm going to ignore that and try to get some of this to play. And we are at our max. We can't go any higher. Let's see if any of this will play. Nothing?
Yeah, we're getting it. We're getting it.
Used to fix small things for me. You found my wallet and my keys. You used to help me day to day, and I would look no other way.
Oh!
Did it sound as bad as
Crash and burn?
Yeah, I can't do this one.
Okay.
Sadly.
We have we have some other software running in the background here to run the mic, guys, and it's I think the resource sharing.
Even with that off, it's still
it's a beast.
I think it's the all the upload stuff.
Gotcha.
Happening at the same time. Which I would love to play this for you, because there's so many different things I can show you in this one song, but it's so big, it's not going to let me. Let me think. Let me see, though, if I can play another song. We won't be able to see the heat, but we would be.
Do you have you don't have a 2-track bounce down of that, do you? Oh, I lost you. Oh, okay. I will entertain everyone in the meantime. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? All right, let's see what we got here. Hi, Ryan. I'm fine. Oh. I won't go there, Pat.
See if this song will play.
Okay, we got you. Yeah, cool.
This is the song from the Record You Vocal demo. I can show you some things on.
Don't ask me to save you. It's something I just can't do. Can't do anymore. Don't speak words that you won't promise. Things that I can't dismiss anymore. It's too late to turn back now from our fate. Nothing you could do or even say could bring me back. It's too late. I've wiped you clean from my slate. Know that's left up so many mistakes that can't change now.
This one is a. Am I back? Yes.
Yep.
This one's a good example of a bunch of minor processes going on from the each individual instrument through submixes through the master mix, rather than trying to hit it hard any one place. This approach is kind of what I call the SSL approach, because it was first allowed when you had a mixing console with a dynamics module on every input. A lot of people tried to get the dynamics modules to sound like their favorite compressors and abandoned them, realizing that they didn't. But they missed the bigger picture, which is they work great in small amounts spread out over the whole mix. So I don't typically use the built-in channel compressor to get a sound as much as I use it just a little bit on everything, almost everything. You'll see a few things that don't have it on up here, but most everything has it a little bit, and I just wanted to show how hard that's hitting. A lot of times it's fast release and a higher ratio and slow, no peak or no fast attack, and that lets the drums kind of gain a little bit of attack. None of the drums are actually hitting a compressor that you can see, but they're all on and they're all pretty subtle.
Huh.
The root mic is the only exception, which is being compressed.
And what's cool about this is you're applying your background in SSL mixing to this mixer, and it's behaving and responding in the way that you can employ the same techniques. Oh, we lost your mic.
It's me trying to be clever here. Solo up the drums. Yeah, not only that, but I'm taking in the box work. I started mixing in the box about 98 and had a great experience happen. I wasn't sure where Pro Tools was headed, but I knew that it or something like it was going to be the future of production. And by 99, I worked on a Canadian project that was mixed by Kevin Killen, who is fairly well known in the mix world. Had mixed Peter Gabriel's So record at that point. Was one of my favorite all-time records, so I was just definitely in awe talking to him on the phone. And but one of the songs didn't get mixed by him. It was my rough mix that was done in the box, and you couldn't tell. There's no distinction. The only way I knew for sure that they had used it was that they Sony Canada had actually paid me for it. I got a check, and I'm like, "What's this for?" Oh, we used one of your mixes. Oh, awesome. So that's actually on my reel. The artist is Chantal Kreviazik, and she won a Juno for her record and for female vocal that year, beating out all the big Canadian all-stars normally would win. And so that kind of showed me that you could mix in the box, and it could stand up alongside somebody, some big-name mixer who mixed at a big studio in New York. So, so let me show you
this. So this song that you just played, you're not saying that's not the Chantal song.
No. This was tracked in Pro Tools though, and imported into Record for the demo for the Record You thing, and I just kept working on it because I'm like, well, this is good practice for mixing and Record and seeing how it comes across. And so the first thing that I needed to do was to build all the things I was used to having, like parallel drum bus compression, and that's done with this guy, the TDC, I'm calling it for now. On the drums, this is really fairly unique. It's basically a transient designer built the way I want it to be built. And that is, it's additive. It only adds. So if we play the drums right here, we're just going to hear the drums. And then I can add more peak information or more sustain information. Let me play you that real quick. More peak.
Wow.
The unique thing here is that we can solo the peak and adjust the length. From very short little transients to longer. And we can... Now that I've ruined my mix. So that's before. that's after. And then that's a subtle add tape. It's a fairly subtle amount of tape added. And this is all summed in with the original audio. Parallel processing, but a different approach to parallel processing. My take on parallel processing is that you're trying to take a high crest factor or high dynamic range signal and add some sustain only information to bring the average up without raising the peak level, which is the catch. How do you do that? So if you're not using a compressor for your parallel compression that's actually fast enough to tame the peaks, you're actually going to add peak level when you bring up the compressor. One of my favorite things about the record mixer is the meter, believe it or not, because you can show VU and peak at the same time.
Right.
And VU and peak is a great way to view what I call crest factor, which is an electrical engineering term, but it means the difference between the peak and the sustain information or the average information. So if we look at this, I'm going to see if I can get both on the screen at the same time. The meter's on the left, and play the drums. When I bring up the sustain, we won't see the peak level move very much. It'll move a little bit, but it'll more or less be, everything gets louder when I hit that button. Now that I'm mic'd in the system here. But watch as I bring up the sustain level, watch the meters. So here we have like 15 dB, 16 dB for the average and 1 for the peak. So we have about a 15 dB crest factor, peak to average. We're going to decrease that by adding more sustain information. You can see the peak is still holding where it was, but the average is now up to 12. And we could go further, but using your ears, you'd probably not want that much. Wow. Now, you might ask, why would I want to put peak information back in after taking it out? And that is because I can control the peak length and just add just the shortest bit of peak in. And there is a limiter in this device as well, in the Combinator, that will hit if I get too aggressive with the peak level. Let's see if it's even hitting now. Oh, it's off. Even if it was on, it's not loud enough to be hitting. And that's in there because since we're doing parallel processing, we're adding a signal to another, it's going to be louder. Now that, I should also mention, is a catch with all parallel processing, is it always sounds better because it's louder. It's two of them instead of one. And it's hard to differentiate in your head between what is improved just because it's louder and what is improved because it's actually sounding better.
You have to get over that bias.
Well, the only way to do that is to compensate the volume in here and compare at equal volume, which I've done when I was working on this device, but I took that mode back out so I could use it as I wanted to. And there's a lot of similar things, like here's a compressor multiband for the electric guitar bus that's tuned. It's just 3 compressors. I think it's Kong compressors. And
you were saying you're using the Kong compressors a lot, huh?
Oh, I love them. Yeah, they're all over everything. They're what I used for this transient designer to separate the peak and the average. They're what I'm using in just about every limiter. They have the fastest attack time besides the maximizer with the look ahead on it. By the way, I figured out that you can add look ahead to the M-Class compressor if anybody's ever interested in that. And I was hoping to have more time to get to showing you some of the things about visualizing compression and others that some people have seen me demonstrate, but not everybody has. So what can I cover then in our remaining time?
Okay, let's take a look at our...
if there's any time left, I think we're probably over.
We are over time, and Music Making Month's almost over, so I'm getting a little loose with the clock here, but we should wrap it up coming up soon.
I'm fine, by the way, to go as long as you want.
Cool. You told us, you were telling me actually just a little bit of history about parallel processing that I thought was interesting in terms of its origin.
Yeah, who was it? Was it Jonas? Who was the product specialist with the dreadlocks?
Yeah,
was he the one
Jonas Leavenworth?
Or was it the parallel compression Freemasons guy. I can't remember, but it shouldn't be called New York compression. I'm on a campaign now to change it to Motown compression. I got a confirmation from my friend Bob Olson, who started his career at Motown in the late 60s, that it was Tony Bongiovi who went from Motown to New York with that process and introduced it there, and it became the New York compression. So it's actually Motown compression.
Gotcha. All right, everybody.
For what it's worth.
Right.
I didn't know that, but it was a great little bit of trivia.
So Charlie Sowat has just entered our chat. He says, "Sorry, I'm late." You're a bit late, Charlie.
You didn't miss anything. I can pretty much sum it up. Play live, play more than one instrument, figure out additive synthesis, and do a lot of parallel process.
All you've missed, Charlie, is that we looked at how Giles is ambidextrous and totally can walk and chew gum at the same time. And he can make additive synths even though they don't exist in Reason, and you've got some cool mixes. I think we've got you up to speed in about 90 minutes. We'll show you the
one
replay.
Of which we couldn't hear, but it was cool. I think. Wish I could share it.
Let's do this. Why don't I'm going to send out the call to everybody to send in your final questions, and we'll kind of field some questions from them here in our waning moments. But there's a question from Starblaze Ruck. He wants to know, do you provide clicks for other musicians when you're playing live?
Live, that's a debatable question. For live, if everyone should hear the click or if just the drummer should hear the click. Pretty much it's nice when just the drummer can hear the click, because not everybody live would have in-ear monitors. And if the drummer's good, that will work fine. I'm not necessarily pro or against playing to a click, but I think you need to be able to do both and do them both well. And some drummers and musicians can only play to a click, and some can't play to a click to save their life. I don't make drummers play to a click that can't play to a click. For the other song that we were just listening to, we did 13 songs for a band. He's the drummer that played on the Record You thing for me. Their name is Victoria, if you get a chance to check out and you like modern progressive rock. They were half of them we cut to a click and half of them we didn't, because they were playing live a lot and they were fine. So the studio is probably different than live, and I'm not sure if the question was specifically for live, but you almost have to try it out for each situation and see if you have the option to feed the click to everybody, see if it works better or worse. In the studio, oftentimes people just say, can you, like the singer, they say, can you just take this thing out of my phones? Hopefully you have a complex enough system that you can do that, but other times everybody wants to hear it. It depends on the musician. It's like anything. I mean, first starting out trying to figure out how to set up headphone mixes for singers, not being a singer myself, after the session, I would go and listen to what they were listening to out of curiosity, and sometimes their voice would be blasting and dry, bone dry. Other times it would be way in the back, buried in reverb. Other times the whole headphones would be barely on, and other times they would be painfully loud. And I'm like, there is no rule. You just got to ask everybody, and every person will give you a different answer. Some singers can't sing without reverb. Some singers can't sing with any reverb, even a little room, and their pitch is gone. So
right.
It's specific to each situation and each group of musician, and the style of music, the genre will dictate that to some degree. Some music you would never play to a click, some you can't play any other way. It doesn't sound right. Right. It's the same thing. The same thing comes up with quantizing drums and correcting timing. The only time I grid drums, I love grid as a verb, by the way. The only times I grid drums is if they're going to equally share the mix with electronic instruments. And if they're going to equally share the mix, then they can't be loose. They'll be flamming all over the place. And so you have to be hardcore there. The rest of the time, I fairly unique in that I'm a musician and an engineer, but I get a lot of work where people send me tracks to correct them. And sometimes that means listening through the whole track and getting to the bridge and saying, whoa, somebody's off there, but not touching anything else before that. And through ear training, which we didn't get a chance to talk about, because ear training works not only for pitches, but also for hearing timing and hearing tuning issues, you can teach yourself, how to determine, like, that's ahead, and it's probably ahead by about 20 milliseconds, and so you can nudge stuff around almost by feel after a while. A lot of times, though, you'll find, you think, oh, the acoustic guitar is ahead, and you realize, no, the bass is behind. When two things hit at once, you don't always know which is the right one, and sometimes you move one and you realize, no, it wasn't that. Because you don't always receive tracks that are cut to a grid, so you can't always just look at the line and see which one is ahead. The other problem, getting back to the click thing, is it relates to this, is that when the drummer is the only one that listens to a click, you cannot just put the drums on the grid, because all the other instruments will be off as well, unless you track the drums first, then grid them, then overdub. So there's a lot of variables in that world, the world of timing. I
see. Well, here's a couple other questions coming in here in the lightning round. So I wish I had a little musical sting, but let's see. There was someone who's been asking a question a few times, so I'll throw it out there. The question is something that comes up a lot. What would you like to see in the next version of Reason and Record?
Oh, I should just post my list. I could just call it up here. I just added Auto Punch to the list because I'd forgotten about that, and somebody was asking about that. Right now, I have an idea that Exode and I have grown. I guess we're twin sons of different mothers. He posted an idea, and I'm like, my God, that's almost exactly what I was going to say. And I was about to post it. Like, within a few days, I was typing it up, trying to get it clear. And but that's one of the things, is a better combinator design, a front panel designer, and which would be a separate product. I think a new combinator needs to be updated. These are just my personal things. Sure. A convolution reverb could really be nice because it's more than just a reverb. A lot of things, little things like markers, and then the biggest one, I guess, is, and I put a mock-up in, and I didn't post the rest of them, but I have other mock-ups that show the device unfolded, but it was the often mentioned, why can't we just put all the Kong modules into a rack device concept? But I think that it's fairly well thought through in how I've figured out how I would want it to function, and it would go hand in hand with the front panel design software, allowing you to build a modular device. Depends on what the modules are that are for it. I mean, there could even be a convolution module, so you could build your own convolution reverb. Depends on the modules that are available. But I would love to see something more modular for the devices and more modular for the user interface design. And I think that began with the Ssl B3 Leslie project, where I'm like, I need more than 4 knobs for this.
Right.
I need 9 sliders right off the bat, and then a bunch more knobs.
I wanted to ask you about the Ssl B3. Can you tell us a little bit about that for people that don't know about it?
Well, that was a proof of concept thing that turned into a product, and Ed for TV was the instigator there. He was probably one of the first guys I resonated with on the forum, and started contacting him as one of those like-minded individuals. And he heard what I was doing and said, "This could be a product." I'm like, "Well, you'll have to put it on your site then, because I don't know anything about posting things like that and doing e-commerce or anything." And he's like, "Sure," which I am eternally grateful for him for doing that. And it started out as, I'll bet this can't be done in Reason, or can it? And it just got out of hand. The studio here, it's right next to me now, has a beautiful B3 and a Leslie cabinet. And I just started taking measurements first with the B3, checking every drawbar step setting. And first thing I found was that if you just pull up one drawbar and play across the keyboard, the level changes. It goes up in the middle and down, so that the higher harmonics aren't as loud as the lower ones. So that meant every harmonic had to have a curve on it. And that was just the beginning. Then was the Leslie day, when I was taping little pieces of tape to the bottom rotors, because the top rotor I could measure how many cycles per second it was. I would just record it, and then see, oh, this is this long, so that means this many cycles per second. The bottom rotor is so washy that you couldn't tell when it was coming back around again. So I just put a little piece of thumbtack and a piece of paper there and let it hit the mic stand, and so it went tap, 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 tap as it sped up. Then I could not only measure the speeds of each of the rotors, but the time it took for them to go from their slow speed to their high speed and various things like that. And then it just totally got out of control. I started using spectrum analyzers and room analysis software and even auto-tune at one point before Neptune as just a pitch readout to see how much Doppler was happening between the two modes. And so I could actually get, set my depth controls on my modulation for that aspect of the sound. And I had to draw a lot of graphs of like, okay, I've got the drawbars, I've got the amp, I've got the speakers, I've got the speakers moving. Each one of these needs to be addressed separately. The amp, I had to use a scream and get that right. And just reminded I used 7 M-class EQs on the treble rotor alone to recreate the same erratic frequency response that's on the original. And then I also took the rotors off and shot the speakers in each of the 4 directions so I could tell what was, how the timbre and the tone was changing as it was rotating. Most of the stuff was obvious. Obviously, it gets darker as it goes away. Obviously, as it's coming back towards you, the pitch rises, and as the rotor is moving away, the pitch falls. And there's all the obvious things, but there was the things like the drawbars not being the same volume across the keyboard I learned a lot about the instrument. In other
Incredible.
words,
I mean, you reverse engineering the B3 and then
totally
and modeling
reverse engineering
it, yourself.
Down to the nth degree.
Yeah, and the result is something that's really amazing to behold. And if people haven't, they should check it out. It's a commercial refill product, right? Am I correct in saying that now that you still sell it?
Yes, it's on Ed's site, Bauman Productions, somewhere on there. I don't even know where. I've got a bookmark for it. I don't know the address by heart.
But it's incredible, and I've heard the demos of it. I've played a little bit with it, and I've seen some of the testimonials, and the people who are organ players say that it responds and sounds like a B3 because it literally is every nook and cranny of a B3 measured and
yeah. There was very little that I wasn't able to do in the end. I did polyphony on the B3. As you play more notes, brings the volume down. Well, Thor has a polyphony control, so I could negatively assign that to as you play more voices, the volume drops. So I played 10 voices on the B3 versus 1 and measure the decibel difference, and then set that control until those same 10 notes on the simulator trigger the same volume difference. And a lot of it was fairly just going through the motions, but being very precise about it rather than having any special knowledge or any background in reverse engineering. It's the first thing I'd ever done. I think the success comes from the love of the instrument and the challenge of, can this be done in Reason? Because the biggest thing for me was the Leslie. I didn't care about the B3 part as much, but the Leslie, all the other Leslies just crossfade with the modulation wheel. They don't actually accelerate and decelerate. And on this one, you can tailor the top and bottom speed for the top and bottom rotor, and you can tailor how fast they take to accelerate and decelerate too. You can make your own custom versions. Now, ideally, I would have loved to have all those things on a front panel so you didn't have to know where to look inside to do it. But I was amazed that with 4 knobs and 4 buttons, I had anything that was playable at all. And if you take the time to assign your take your time to just happens that this one slider that I just pulled was on my voice as I'm showing you visual aids here, so I won't touch the sliders. But when you map them to drawbars inverted, it's like, oh wow, now it's really like a B3. So
wow. It's
and Ed was very helpful in not only talking me through some of the frustration, but providing some of the solutions to things like how to keep a Thor always on even when you hit stop, because in the case of an effect it doesn't matter, but an instrument you're going to want to play it when you hit stop. You don't want to have to hit play so that you can just play and hear it. And also, the Leslie is standalone, so you can run stuff like guitar and acoustic piano. If you probably heard that sound on a lot of records through the years, from the Beatles on down,
Sure,
without knowing it. So it's there's a standalone Leslie version as well.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. So even if you're not an organ user or organ player.
Yeah, and you just love that effect, and you need to be able to tailor it more specifically than maybe some of the other options out there, or you need to stay in the Reason environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely can say I surprised myself with that one, because I didn't think it was going to be possible.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the thing that pushed it over the top, I had all the panning, all the pitch Doppler modulation things, the crossover to have the low and high rotor separated at the right point, and it just sounded like a glorified chorus. It wasn't until I started to make the weird EQ curve and the fact that there's really very little above 4K out of a Leslie cabinet that the sound became recognizable. Anybody that owns it, I think I put a version in there just for fun that's with the Leslie speaker simulation aspect of it off, which is just all the EQs bypassed.
Okay.
And like, well, that sounds like a kind of a halfway decent chorus effect and nothing more. Doesn't make you think Leslie until you hear that weird, very erratic frequency response.
Interesting.
With that obvious hump around 4K and another one around the lower one around 400 or 500 or so, and then a little dip where the crossover is around 700 or 800.
And I love it. This is the modular aspect that I love of, and I think a lot of the stuff we've seen of yours tonight, this applies, is this idea that in Reason that it's as deep as you want it to be, and if something that you want is not in there, you can build it, and having access to all of these tools interconnected, and you can dump them in a combinator, and you can save them as a patch. You literally can build, sort of. I have yet to see the thing where it's like, oh well, you can't do that. I mean, there's no additive synth in Reason. Well, that didn't stop you,
Yeah, there's only a very few things, and the ones that haven't already been covered, like Neptune, are getting to be few and far between. Now people are asking for a better version of this or a better version of that. I think maybe a convolution reverb is one of those things. And then it's like people saying, I'd love to have my own waves in Maelstrom, or I'd love to have time stretching in a sampler. For me, the idea of the rack device, the modular device, allows, if they were to ever go that way, would allow those types of things to happen quicker, because in a modular device, you can just design an oscillator. Give me a wavetable oscillator that can load its own samples. We don't need a whole new Maelstrom. We just need the oscillator. We can add the envelopes and filters and the rest. And I would think that the exciting thing about that approach to me is that they could release a new component a lot quicker than they could release a whole new instrument and give us some of the features. Or a sampler that time stretches. I don't mean the whole sampler. I just mean the actual sampler guts, not the filter, not the envelope, not an LFO, just basically the sampling oscillator. And the whole unit could be stereo, so you could even have stereo multi-oscillators like in Thor. Instead of those 7 or 8, however many sawtooth waves they are, they could be spread out with a spread control from the oscillator. So there's a lot of things that could happen in that type of environment, and it doesn't have to be specifically the way I'm describing it. It just has to be. I think one of the feature requests that I liked was recently was a return to modularity. And I don't know if they ever left it, but I would like to see at least one device go more modular with for not, the average person isn't going to build their own things, but folks like myself and others that build stuff can do a lot for these people to make them some very usable tools. And I imagine the propeller heads would, I think about the piano refill needing, like, that's got to have more than 4 knobs on, or the Reason drum kits. What could they do with a modular device and a front panel designer? So wishful thinking. I'm getting tons of work done now with everything that exists, and all my suggestions and things like about groups and other things that I've been harping on for a while are hardly keeping me from getting work done, but they be appreciated if and when they come.
Well, I can tell you, I'm behind the scenes here. I can tell you that the engineers and programmers and developers are busy working away every day, and the rest of the companies reading the forums and the feature suggestions, and everyone's always taking this stuff in. So it's the time is a limited resource, but desire is not, and we are working to just keep pushing Reason forward, and the whole environment. So I hear you, and yes, let's do it all. I want it all.
I want it all, and I want it now. Somebody asked me once, if you focused on what you want and when you want it, that's a way to manifest things. I'm like, okay, then I want it all, and I want it now. And they're like, no, you can't say that. I'm like, well, you told me what do I want and when do I want it? Well, I want it all, and I want it now. So they didn't like my response. They didn't appreciate it.
Well, listen, Giles, I want to thank you. We've nearly lapped our time. We've nearly done 2 hours here together. So
and there's still people in the chat room. I can't believe it.
They're hanging in. Everyone's still going. We've almost hit the record for the longest event, but I think, unless a guy called Gerald really goes for it tomorrow, I think that honor is going to go to Ed for TV. So,
couldn't have happened to a better guy. Go Ed.
But you're coming in second place, and Pef behind you. Oh. It's all good company. It's all the all stars of the Reason community that are doing these long ones.
So I have to ask here, we're almost at the end. Is there talk of this being an annual event? Possibly. Right now, you probably don't. It's the last thing you want to think about doing. But this, I think it's gone off pretty well.
I think it has too. I don't know. Is there talk there? I'll tell you, and I'll be candid to everyone at home too. This is probably not the last thing that we do. This was a proof of concept test for us, really, to see does this streaming thing work, and would people show up for it, and would you guys, can you plan 35 events that need to go off with Swiss Army watch precision and have no cancellations? And the answer was yes, it can work. And so it is probably not the last thing we do. As to what we're doing and when we're doing that, I don't know. But it's been a fun medium to work with for me. I think it's been fun for everybody out there, and I think that we have connected. There's been really amazing things that we've connected with over this month, and that is that I think a lot of us are in the same boat musically and are benefiting from a common set of information. And I think that a lot of us are really talented, and I've been shocked at the music I play at the beginning of the show and the involvement of the community to really see people out there that are doing stuff and are incredibly talented with this. So I couldn't imagine us just turning off the lights and calling it a one-off experiment. There will be more of these.
In one form or another. Yeah, all the music that I've heard leading in and out of the shows has been phenomenal, actually.
Yeah.
Just better than good. It's been pretty phenomenal.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, for me, the tragedy now is that I'm going to have to, the cutting room floor, when this is over, there's going to be great songs that didn't make it onto the air. So, but that doesn't mean you should stop sending me stuff. I want more tweets tonight, okay? Let's get one great last song for tomorrow night, everybody. But anyway, well, listen, Giles, thanks so much for doing this. It's been
My
awesome.
pleasure.
And
invite me over for the next one. I'll be glad to join whatever the next one is, whenever it is.
Totally.
Let me know.
Totally. We have not seen the last of you. That's for sure.
You have been warned.
You have been warned, community. Exactly. All right, cool. Well, have a good night, and we will talk to you soon. So that's it. That does it for us, guys. And all I can say is, tomorrow night, man, it's all coming down to tomorrow night. Last event, a guy called Gerald, 9 p.m. European, 3 p.m. East Coast, 12 noon on the West Coast, and come back. Let's have fun. We have one more night together. Let's really make it a cool night. We're gonna talk to Gerald about his live rig and whatever else. It's no rules tomorrow night. Whatever you want to talk about, let's just chat about it. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Don't forget to tweet your music, MMM prop songs. and you'll get on the show tomorrow night.
Stuck inside the song.